Narada Muni, Drishta, seeing, Ridditaha, being ashamed, Devyaha, the young girls of the demigods, Vivastraha, although they were naked, Shapa Shankitaha, being afraid of being cursed, Vasamsi, garments, Pariyadohu, cover the body, Shigram, very swiftly, Vivastram, who were also naked, Na, not, Eva, indeed, Guya, cow, the two sons of Kuvera. Translation: upon seeing Narada, the naked young girls of the demigods were very much ashamed, afraid of being cursed. They covered their bodies with their garments. But the two sons of Kuvera did not do so. Instead, not caring about Narada, they remained naked. You can repeat. Upon seeing Narada, the naked young girls of the demigods were very much ashamed, afraid of being cursed. They covered their bodies with their garments. But the two sons of Kuvera did not do so. Instead, not caring about Narada, they remained naked. So there's no purport to this text. We're going to read the next text with its purport. Text 7. Thou Trishramadithwamatau Srimadandau Suratmajau Vayoranugrahartaya Shapam Dasyanidam Jagau. Seeing the two sons of the demigods naked and intoxicated by opulence and false prestige, Devarshi Narada, in order to show them special mercy, desired to give them a special curse. Thus he spoke as follows. And it's a purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Although in the beginning Narada Muni appeared very angry and cursed them, at the end the two demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krsna, face to face. Thus the curse was ultimately auspicious and brilliant. One has to judge what kind of curse Narada placed upon them. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives herein a good example. When a father finds his child deeply asleep, but the child has to take some medicine to cure some disease, the father pinches the child. Oh my God, my father never pinched me. So that the child will get up and take the medicine. In a similar way, Narada Muni cursed Nalakuvara and Manigriva in order to cure their disease of material blindness. Shoot, heavy stuff going on here. So, Om Gana Timirandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shi Gurave Namaha. So, first thing we have to understand here is that Narada Muni's anger is not coming from frustration. Of course, normally in a situation like that, like if some people appeared like that in front of me, I would get angry thinking, why don't they respect me? I'm Narada, if I was Narada Muni, I'd be thinking like that. I said, I'm Narada! Why don't they respect me? Don't they understand standing like that? And so that, of course, is, contemplation of sense objects. But in this particular case, the sense object is false prestige. And then by contemplation, when one gets attached, it grows. It's actually an interesting thing about anger. Let's talk about anger for a second. It feeds upon itself. Just like if you look at the internet, God forbid, that one person will criticize another person, whatever, and the other person will get into it, yeah, and the next person will get even more, and it escalates. And there's really nothing you can do about it. If you actually put in the comments, in the whole stream, the comment stream there, they calm things down. Then they attack you. Isn't it? So there's nothing you can do. You just have to stand back, and watch until it plays out. Until people get too exhausted and fall down exhausted. Because that reminds me of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's passing, which is transcendental. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one time asked his mother for some ingredients for a sacrifice, or for food or something, his mother said, just wait a few minutes, I'll get it for you. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got so angry. It's a pastime. It's not because he was materially frustrated. He actually went into the house and just destroyed everything in the house. He tore everything from the shelves, the grains, and whatever else, vegetables, and just demolished the house. And then after a while, he just went unconscious. He fell to the ground. He was like, and then he came back. I mean, this is, actually it's a pastime. Don't criticize Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for this. Because he's enjoying the indirect rasa of anger, krodha. And, because it's actually enjoyable, maybe not for us, but it's actually enjoyable for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although we're experiencing the perverted reaction or reflection of it. Just like why do people go to watch football games? Because they get angry. They're enjoying it. Or why do people, oh my God, I shouldn't use this example. Why do people go to political rallies and they get angry? Lock her up! Lock her up! Send her back! Send her back! Oh my God. Isn't it? I mean, political rallies are like that. Just like recently there was a debate between the different candidates, even the Democratic Party. They're all pretty angry people. Anyway, just finding fault with each other and getting angry and everything like that. So anyway, getting back to the story of Lord Chaitanya, which is transcendental. And then Lord Chaitanya woke up and he was really peaceful when he woke up. And he asked his mother, what's the problem, Mom? He said, you basically tore apart the whole house. And we don't have any more ingredients for anything. I mean, the house belongs to you, the ingredients belong to you. His father had passed away before that. And so, what are we going to do? And he said, don't worry, Mom. And so peacefully, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the river to bathe and came back with a few mounds of gold. So, actually, if we hear about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's anger, we can conquer our own anger. It's really, really nice. Or Prabhupada's angry, being angry with the atheists, kick on their face with boots or something like that. And, it's just really transcendental. That's the method. Just like you hear about Krishna's so-called lusty affairs with the gopis, then your own sort of lust just diminishes. If you hear about it from the proper person, if you hear about it from the improper person, then your lust will increase because you're going to hear about it. Just like if people watch lusty movies or whatever, then it's not that they become less lusty. It's not that people go on the internet and they watch lusty stuff, then all of a sudden, they come to their wives and they say, oh yes, you're a goddess. No, they see their wives like an object rather than a subject. But when you hear about Krishna's activities, you know, if someone wants to hear about romance, just like when I was young, sometimes my mother would watch soap operas. You know, as the day turns or something like that. Or
as the dawn turns.
As the dawn turns. But as the day turns, you know, tune in next week to find out if Petunia will actually fall in love with Gary. It was like that. I mean, I never watched the whole one. It's just like, you know, you go by and see, what the hell is going on? Yuck. And so, anyway, so people have a natural tendency to hear about these things. But to hear about, you know, fighting, or they get into video games and they fight, or a natural tendency to hear about loving exchanges, or any of the, or fear, just like when I was young, we'd go to horror movies in the weekend. My mother would just send us to the cinema. That's an interesting word, cinema. You don't hear that word that much. Yeah. Like Prabhupada talks about cinema songs. Mm-hmm. I mean, in America, if you go to the university and talk about the cinema, you think, what's a cinema? It's a word that's not even used anymore. Or movies, or tape recorder. You know, there's all sorts of things that people can't relate to. So, you know, my mother would give me like, I think it was a nickel or a quarter. Imagine going to the movies for a quarter or a nickel. Nowadays it's like, oh my God, $10, $20 to go see a movie. I know, the last time I went to a movie, one of my godbrothers treated me. The Lord of the Rings, and I wouldn't pay for it myself, so he took me out on a date. At least it wasn't romantic. So anyway, so people have a natural desire to get fearful, to be afraid. And why do they go on the roller coasters? To get afraid, isn't it? They're screaming. You hear that as they're going down, and they're paying to become afraid. You know, isn't that crazy? I mean, I could do it cheaper for you. You know, just come out here one morning with me, you know, and I'll make sure you get afraid. You know, and you only have to pay me $5. So anyway, of course, when we hear about Krishna's things, or Krishna's, you know, fearfulness, you know, like, or bewilderment, you know, Krishna's bewilderment, thinking, what am I going to do with the coward boys who marched into the Agasura? And then we just don't desire to do it ourselves. You know, hear about Krishna and Balaram jumping down from a 90-mile mountain to escape Jarasandha, then my whole desire to go hang gliding goes away. It's interesting. But if I read about someone else doing it, then I desire to do it. It's amazing. It actually has a different effect, even though the activity appears to be exactly the same activity. So, anyway, so Narada's anger is not because he's feeling offended. His anger is because of compassion. Exactly like Prabhupada points out in the purport. Now, there's many examples of sages who get angry because they feel offended. And the example given in the Bhagavatam is Vashishta Muni, even, the great Vashishta Muni, and Maharaj Nimi. Maharaj Nimi just simply went on Sankirtan against his guru's instructions. Well, not his guru prohibited Sankirtan, but his guru basically, the Sankirtan in those days was a sacrifice, you know, a Vaishnava sacrifice. His guru said, wait until I come back. You know, just wait. And he understood Guru was going to be gone for a long time because Guru was going to the heavenly planets to do a sacrifice for the demigods. So that's quite a long time. If I were to say to devotees who wanted to go on Harinam, wait about 5 years before you go until I come back. I said, what kind of guru is that? You know, you're not supposed to follow the guru blindly. He tells you 5 years wait, or 10 years wait until you go in Harinam. So I'm going out now. The holy name is transcendental. So Maharaj Nimi, his disciple, Vashishta Muni's disciple, thought, I don't want to be a blind follower. The holy name is transcendental, or the sacrifices are transcendental. So he performed the sacrifice. Vashishta Muni came back, and he said, out of anger and frustration, you have not followed my instructions. I curse you to die immediately. I don't do that with disciples. If I did that with my disciples who didn't listen to my instructions, I'd have to get like thousands of Brahmin threads. I have to just like keep a stock in them in the temple room. So I could break my Brahmin thread and curse. Or, you know, water pots, you know, like they traditionally do in the movies, the Indian movies. They have a water pot, the sage puts the water in his hand, and someone becomes a snake or whatever. So it doesn't work. Of course, Kali Yuga, if you curse someone, it comes back to you. So I definitely don't do that. I definitely just pray for people. No matter what they do, I pray for them. So, anyway, that was an example where a sage actually gets angry, and it was due to the wrong reason. Of course, Maharaj Nimi, being a pure devotee, he went back to Godhead. First, the sages tried to bring him back to life after the sacrifice, not Vashishta. Vashishta had also died because his disciple cursed him. Curse and counter-curse. But Maharaj Nimi, when his body was brought out of the vat of oil, he said, I don't want to come back to this material world. I just want to go back to Godhead, you know. My guru cursing me was actually a blessing. That's pretty good, isn't it? Blessing. Like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was cursed too. How was he cursed? Because people were very much upset that they couldn't get into the kirtan at Srivas Thakur's house, Srivas Sangha. And why were they upset? Because they'd only allowed pure devotees in. They had a bouncer there at the door, like they do in bars, you know, someone bounces you out. It's an interesting word, bouncer. The reason the word bouncer is there because he takes you and throws you on the ground and you bounce. That's why he's called a bouncer. So this person cursed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, I have been locked out of this kirtan. I curse you to be locked out of your house. And Lord Chaitanya said, Joy, Hari Bol. Isn't it? And that's one reason why he took sannyas. Because the curse was a blessing. Anyway, he took sannyas, obviously, for his own esoteric and exoteric reasons. But he didn't counter-curse. It's interesting. It's interesting, you know, there's many instances where devotees get cursed. I mean, there's the curse, of course, that Prabhupada mentions, always in the Bhagavatam, where Daksha curses Narada Muni, because Daksha has just convinced Narada Muni has just convinced Daksha's sons, the two groups of the Haryashvas and the Savalashas, to renounce this world. You know, 11,000 young boys to renounce this world, and Daksha curses Narada Muni to not be able to reside in any place for very long. And Narada Muni just says, Hari Bol, you know. Except for Narada Kund, which is part of Braj, so curses don't apply in the Holy Dham. You don't have to worry. If you got a curse, just stay in the temple room all the time. Chant the holy names, just like it. You chant the holy names, then you don't have to worry about curses or any stupid things like that, or Rahus. It was like, I was reading how Hanuman, he had his Saturn period, and he just Saturn just like started to affect him, so he put all these rocks on his head and crushed Saturn to death. So his whole encounter with Saturn became reduced to like 10 seconds. So if you worship Hanuman, you don't have to worry about the Saturn period. It's very nice. So anyway, so Prabhupada even said that his disciples' parents cursed him to not remain in one place, so he had to travel. And then Prabhupada said he was transferring that curse to his disciples. So his disciples would travel. So anyway, so these are some examples of sages cursing because of their own false prestige or anger or whatever. So this is not Narada Muni's situation. And I was thinking about this when I was reading this verse, that there are other sages who do the same thing as Narada Muni, who curse for the right purpose. And many of the demons that were killed by Krishna were actually cursed by sages to get Krishna's association. And I have a list of some of them here. One of them is Trinaparta, the bag of hot air, the whirlwind demon, cyclone demon. And these are stories from the Puranas. He was a king, a big king named Sahasriksha, and he had 1,000 wives. Poor guy. Anyway, and the king was enjoying naked with his 1,000 wives, and it's similar to the Manigriva Nalakuvara story. So Durvasa Muni got pretty upset with him. I mean, he's the sage you definitely don't want to curse, because Durvasa means the sage with a bad temper. You don't want to aggravate him. You got to be real careful with Durvasa. So anyway, so he was cursed to live on earth for 100,000 years, and then killed by Lord Krishna. Oh, yeah, one thing I want to talk about here is these curses appear to be really heavy. I mean, like Manigriva Nalakuvara, like so many years of demigods, like 100 years of demigods, or 1,000 years. I mean, why not, if you're going to curse someone, do it light, Prabhu. Isn't it? I mean, some of it, or like even relating to the punishments in the Bhagavatam. Isn't there a better way to do these things? Or even relating to this world right now, how people are suffering. Isn't there a better way? Or things that we encounter, let's say, a devotee gets some disease. Like you hear about devotees getting cancer or other diseases like that. And it helps them become Krishna conscious, but can't you do it a better way, Krishna? Or old age, look in the mirror and you say, oh my God, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's that old person who looks like hell? So, or you're going to use that app on the phone, the face app. You turn someone into an old person. Here's your wife in 20 years from now. So you're thinking, but actually Krishna uses the karma, law of karma, whatever, uses the least painful way to do it. The least painful way. Doesn't do the most painful way. But sometimes it's required, 100 years, celestial years, 100 celestial years is a long time. But the demigods, like with Manigriva Nalakuvara, or 1,000 years with this king I just mentioned. 1,000 is a long time. I mean, I get antsy after 5 minutes. ADD. But can you imagine having to stand for 100 years of the demigods? That means millions of years, basically. To stand there, you can't even pull your mobile phone out, or your iPad. You stand there, and it's another winter, another summer, another spring. Oh my God. And every year, the tree grows a ring. Did you know that? That's how you can tell the age of the tree. So you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. So, but anyway, we should be assured that whatever Krishna does, it's the least as far as rectifying us. The least. It's not the most, although it appears like, why doesn't Narada Muni just say, you become Krishna conscious, I bless you, okay. And Nalakuvara, Manigriva apologize in this particular instance and say, we're sorry, Narada, we should have chanted our rounds this morning. We got up late, This is what happens when you don't have good sadhana. Like here in New Goloka, sometimes I'm wondering, is this a Mangalarti morning program? It's louder than the kirtan in the mornings, the snoring of the devotees. And I'm thinking we have to get the decibel meter and put it right next to the ashrams of the devotees. So sometimes, tough love is required. I mean, just like sometimes you give someone good instruction, you give them, please get up, Bangalarti. Pretty please. Pretty please with sugar on it. Right? And then, get up. Then after a while, if you don't get up,
it's on the wrong thing.
If you don't get up, no prasadam. Anyway, so you have to escalate sometimes. You get heavier and heavier. You can get up or else, anyway, you can't do too much. They'll call 911 on you. They'll take you to court for abuse or something like that. So this definitely would be a type of abuse, isn't it? I mean, if social services heard that you turned someone into a tree for 1,000 years, that's worse than a good spanking. But sometimes it's required. And after being there for 1,000 years, or hundreds celestial in the case of Manigriva and Nalakuvara, they learned the lesson. But that was what was required. Or with the Yamadutas, or with the suffering that we have to undergo in these bodies, isn't it? Or the suffering we have to undergo because there's some enemy, people criticizing us, people attacking us, or the suffering we have to go by because we're reading, we're looking at CNN in the morning and reading the latest news about, can't talk about it in class. Oh my God, what is this country coming to? Well, Krishna said, Dukalyam Sanskritam. Krishna says, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka. From the highest planet to the lowest planet, they're all miserable. From America to Somalia, they're all miserable. Isn't it? So you actually see things in the right perspective. Like Dharma the bull saw when Kali was cutting his leg. So anyway, so therefore, when these curses happen, or when the Yamadutas do their thing, or when old age does its thing, or when disease does its thing, it's all the least possible to rectify the soul. That we have to have faith of, even though it appears like, wow, there should be a better way. We're second guessing Krishna. So anyway, it's another few curses which are really interesting. Agasura, he's a really good guy. In the Garga Samhita, it mentions in his previous life he was Agal, the son of Shankasura. He was very handsome. This is the problem. Just like Manigriva and Nalakuvara, they were very rich. And he was proud. And one time he saw a great Muni, Astavakra. Astavakra his body is like curved 8 ways. It's called ashta, curved in 8 ways. And he laughed. That's called, nowadays it's called what? Body shaming. All these new words, isn't it? Fat shaming, body shaming, brain shaming, you know. And he said, you don't body shame someone. You are ugly. So he said, who is this ugly person? And the sage said, okay, I curse you to become the ugliest snake on earth. Not only become a snake, but actually the ugliest snake. I mean, some snakes are kind of pretty, like cobra, you know, with a jewel on it, so it's kind of nice snake. But Agasa was ugly. And Aga fell at his feet, and the sage blessed him. Yes, but you'll be delivered by Lord Krsna. So for so many years, it doesn't describe here how many years, but for so many years he had to just lay there like a snake, lamenting, thinking, what did I do? I mean, sometimes it's required. What did I do? Oh my God. I shouldn't have opened my mouth up. Right? And you know, people, like you go on the internet, people criticize. That happens if you criticize the Vaishnava. They open their mouth and God knows what the destination is. We feel really compassionate for it. What's that?
So, like Nala Kubra and Manigriva and Aga, they all remembered their thing.
Yeah.
So they had full memory.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, just becoming a tree, like going to sleep for a few years, you know, it's kind of cool, you know. Isn't it? Yeah, you have to remember. Because otherwise it's not a punishment. I mean, if you're just like, you know, I curse you to become a tree, but you're not going to remember anything, you're just going to go to sleep. Yeah, fine, I like to sleep. But the tree suffers. And sometimes the animal, just like Bart Maharaj, he was able to remember his past life when he became a deer. So otherwise, what's the sense of the punishment? Stand by a tree for 1,000 years. Okay, as long as I can be unconscious. Novocaine, give me the Novocaine or general anesthesia, isn't it? What's the difference? So anyway, and then maybe one other demon. One of my favorite ones was Denakasura, the S demon. He was, of course, killed by Balaram. He was in the Talavana forest. And we're going to be reading about these stories in a little while. Right now I'm in the Gopal Champu. I'm almost coming to the demons in the Gopal Champu. Yesterday we finished the bumblebee story, which is really amazing. It actually goes into greater depth than the Bhagavatam does with Radharani, like talking to the bumblebees. Really interesting. Anyway, so as far as Denakasura, the Garga Samhita mentions, he was the son of Bali Maharaj named Sika. And he again offended Durvasa Muni. And just by making noise, you got to be careful around Durvasa Muni, while he was enjoying with 10,000 women. Phew. One of these people get renounced. Durvasa, because he was making noise like an ass. He cursed him to become an ass, saying, "Fool, you're an ass-like person, become an ass." So he had to become an ass for 400,000 years. Oh my God. You got to be really careful around sages, you know. And even if the sage forgives you, sometimes the dust of the feet don't forgive you. And of course, then he was killed by Balaram. And one of the reasons he was killed by Balaram was because Krsna had promised Bali Maharaj he wouldn't kill any of his family members. So Krsna has a trick, you know, he made for Balaram to kill a family member of Bali Maharaj. So, any questions or comments? Yeah.
One thing I was reflecting on was that you can see how like dangerous pride is, and like,
Yeah.
because
And lust.
and pride and lust, because you see like so often you see Narumuni going around just giving benedictions, and even how kind he was to Mugrari, who was had, like we tell the story yesterday, had so many animals and was like such a low personality, and of course like you said his cursing was kind, but I'm thinking, I was just reflecting how that kind of pride and intoxication of beauty and lust, how he became, he had to give him such a hard lesson, even harder than the lesson of Mugrari.
Yeah, because Mugrari was not offensive. He was not offensive. That was the difference.
He was just ignorant.
Yeah, he was just ignorant. And because he had no knowledge, he wasn't as responsible. More knowledge gives more responsibility, as we said yesterday in class. Like Gopal always says, more power, you have more responsibility, referring to his superheroes. Okay, on that happy note,